And I actually want to close out this conversation with another letter. And it's also written by that same young, articulate, even poetic Marine Corps machine gunner, Saul Segal, who wrote the letter that opened this podcast. And this one is written to the cousin of one of his comrades named James Trowbridge. And the cousin did not know what happened to her cousin, Corporal Trowbridge, who had gone missing in World War I, and she didn't know what happened to him. And so this is another letter written after the end of the war. It's dated February 18th, 1920. And it reads, "My dear Miss Trowbridge, my old Sergeant Major Clifford has written me and has enclosed a copy of your letter to him in which you request information concerning your cousin, Corporal James H. Trowbridge. It is indeed unfortunate that his family should be left so uncertain concerning his sad end. I know that it has been the cause of great concern with you. I am sorry, too, that I had not known of this before, for I was the last of his friends to see him alive." Though Sergeant Clifford wrote me January 16th, I have been out adventuring in the oil fields of northern Texas, and I have only lately ventured back into civilization. Your letter was forwarded to me from my home in Ohio, and I received it tonight and am taking this first occasion to answer it. I hope it will clear up Jim's case. And if there's anything I can do in the future, any service I can perform, any advice I can offer to Jim's folks, I will be at their service at all times. We who have survived this hell on earth count it the least we can do to console the sorrowing mothers and families of our dead comrades in arms. I still remember when I first met Jim. It was in Bella Woods on the 13th of June. We were making ready for the attack when replacements arrived to fill up our broken ranks. Jim was assigned to my gun crew, and the way he went over the top like the brave soldier he always was, and his subsequent actions made me his proud friend and comrade to the day he went west. I still remember one night on guard with Jim in the little hole alongside. The night held an eerie stillness, a night fit for such a hellhole. I was deathly tired, and though there was no wire, only an empty space between the Germans and us, I slept. And Jim, like the good pal he was, kept watch until the officer of the watch came by, when he awakened me that I might not be shot for sleeping at my post. It was for deeds like that every man in the company idolized him. And I can assure you that Jim Trowbridge's name and memory will forever be held in reverence by the survivors of the 23rd Company. So many men were wounded and left us, then came back during the battles that followed Bella Woods to the last phase of the Argonne Drive, that I must confess ignorance as to whether Jim was or not. You see, Jim was assigned to a crew of his own and a machine gun of his own. And on the battle line, the number 1 and number 10 gun may be in the same company, yet they are a world apart. Each carries on and knows that the other is carrying on, and so the battle is won. Yet I dimly remember that Jim was either gassed or wounded in the Champagne Drive, in which the 2nd Division captured Mont Blanc Ridge. It began on October 2nd, 1918. Jim came back to us before the last phase of the Argonne Drive, which began on November 1st, 1918. Through the mud and rain and fog, we pushed forward over the top that glorious day, the 2nd Division leading the whole army. We captured every piece of Boche field artillery. White hot they were, and we sent the Germans scurrying back and broke their invincible line to bits. My company suffered terribly in dead and wounded. Yet we carried on, hungry and tired and facing the everlasting hail of bullets and shells. We pushed forward for 6 days, battling steadily. The 6th of November rose dismally. I remember passing Jim by the roadside, and he gave me a cheery hail. Then he followed up the rear. We went forward, and the Boche began shelling us. As the last of the column came up, I heard from them that Jim's crew had rested once again by the roadside. None of us were strong. We had not eaten in days. A great shell had exploded and had killed and wounded all of Jim's crew. Jim had had a foot torn off by a flying fragment. There was death and destruction all about. I volunteered to help carry a wounded man back to the first aid station. There was Jim, lying on the blanketed floor. I knelt down to speak to him. I marked that his face was already drawn with pain and that he was gray from long exposure and loss of blood. He said, "Saul, old pal, I'm dying. Good luck to you, old man." I tried to cheer him up, but to no avail. On the battlefield, one knows when death approaches. That is all I know. For a few hours later, I was knocked out myself. Yet I doubt not that Jim went west to home and to mother soon after. Whether Jim died and was buried in the village a few miles south of Sedan in the Ardennes department, or whether he survived until he reached a hospital, I do not know. You can find out by writing the Graves Registration Bureau at Washington. That he is gone, I am reasonably sure. I would advise his family to harbor no unfounded hopes in his safety. It is with deep regret that I ask yours and Jim's mother's pardon for my heartless and brutal description of this story. My experiences on the battlefield have caused me to use other than tender words that might soothe a broken-hearted mother. Believe me, nevertheless, that I grieve with her for her son and my comrade. And believe me, too, that I stand ready to do all in my power to assist her in any possible way. It is hard, I know, yet at such a cost has liberty and democracy survived. Accept, my dear Miss Trowbridge, the assurance of my profound respect. Most sincerely, Saul Siegel. So, liberty and democracy survived. But at such a cost, and so many bore that cost. The fighting that Saul Siegel writes about was part of the Meuse-Argonne offensive. It was part of the 100 Days offensive that brought the war to an end. And while bringing the war to the end, it cost the lives of 26,277 Americans. And Corporal James Trowbridge was one of those Americans. He died around the 6th of November, 1918. And as we know, the armistice was signed and the war ended just 5 days later, on November 11th, 1918.